Good morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. I'm saying that because I think this is probably our most broad international panel that we have. We have representation in the United States, France, and India. And I'm very, very excited about this panel because one thing that I have not understood is how to value my time in the way of like thinking billable hours. Like, lawyers make a lot of money to go to law school. Psychologists go to make a lot of money, go to law school. Academics go to law school too, and can charge money, and that's okay to do. I'm excited to be able to hear our speakers and their expertise. We're going to be talking of a wide variety of things about planning entire projects, to how you can manage your time and talking with individual people. And so it should be good. By way of announcement, we have for next week, our next panel is going to be specifically on the academic hiring process, and kind of an honest conversation about how it's flawed and what we can do to be better. And that's will actually be taking place on Tuesday instead of Wednesday because of scheduling. So before we go, I have a new background. This is my first new background, everybody. I'm in a hotel room in Boise, Idaho, because so if you're familiar with our story, all of our stuff is in Washington State, or it was. Now it's in a trailer or in a truck in Idaho, because we're making shifts to everything to be moving to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I have a brother, because I got a job. This thing works. Networking works, and you can do this transition. You can make this transition into a new career. Mine is a junior business data analyst at Gaggle, which is a really cool company that works with K through 12 education, with suicide prevention and harassment prevention in K through 12. And so I'm really, really excited about this opportunity. But that's another thing for another day. I would love to get started. As we're going through, please make sure that you submit your comments and questions. We have our panelists are, many of them are submitting, or they're offering 15 to 30 minute consultations for free for those who enter the raffle by asking a question. And so I'll let each of them come on and kind of introduce themselves, and then we'll go ahead and get started. As my role as moderator, I'll do my best to just kind of keep off screen, make sure we have the questions coming, and we'll go from there. Okay. All right. So without further ado, let me introduce to you. We have Vera.
Hello.
Shalini, Nilesh, and
Hi.
Sinclair.
Hello,
Thank
everyone.
you, everybody, for being here. Here's what we'll do. I'll just have each of you just kind of introduce yourselves. We'll start with Vera, and then go with Shalini, and then Sinclair, and then Nilesh. We'll just kind of go in a little Z there, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Again, thank you so much for being here, everybody. Vera, let's start with you.
Thanks for having me. You may know me from my YouTube channel, PhD Coffee Time. Offline, I'm actually transitioning in my career, and I am finishing my postdoc this year in April. And I'm trying to break into a new role that is non-academic. So I'm at the moment transitioning into a freelancing medical writing role with the help of another freelancer who is more advanced. So that's my background. I have a life biology PhD from Hong Kong. I'm passionate about the topic of time management because I think I have come a long way to learn that as a postdoc, as PhD.
And Shalini.
Hey everybody, pleasure to be here with these excellent panelists, and thanks Eric for the invitation. I am the founder, president, and people strategist at my own firm, Evida Solve. I basically work with business leaders, senior executives, etc., to create exceptional workplace cultures, and on the flip side, transform their people into exceptional professionals, because we need both sides to ensure that we have happy people. The motivation for this was that 80% of the workforce is actually unhappy in their current work. So if you are unhappy with your current role, you're not alone. There are solutions to it. Some that we can do ourselves, including time management, which we'll talk about today, and some that companies and organizations can do, which is what I spend most of my waking hours doing. Prior to this, I was a management consultant with the Boston Consulting Group for a few years, ended up working with a whole range of industries, functions across the world with them. And before that, completed my postdoc at Yale with Professor Tom Pollard, working on the actin cytoskeleton, and my PhD in biochemistry and structural biology in Singapore. I love the concept of time management. Well, not love the concept. My theory about time management is very simple. It is our only non-renewable resource. So if you're not careful with that, you can't really exchange it for anything else.
Okay, and Sinclair, and then Nilesh.
Hello, everybody. So glad you all are here, and it's a pleasure for me to be here as well with these amazing panelists. Just to echo what Shalini just said, my name is Sinclair Caesar, originally from New Jersey, but currently living in San Antonio. I'm a mental health speaker and writer, and with this work that I do, it's all about ending mental health stigma, storytelling, and just wellness in general. So I've done a lot of work around boundary setting and really coming from a place of valuing yourself and valuing your time, but also just valuing the effort that you put in your life professionally and personally. So this topic is near and dear to my heart, and I'm so glad to be able to share this space with everyone today. I'm also currently an academic advisor at Trinity University, so I work very closely with faculty every day, and I'm just really glad to just be here and talk with you all.
Hello everyone. My name is Nilesh, and I am currently the co-founder of Blue Turtle Biotechnologies, which is a San Francisco-based startup. What we do is we engineer microbes to have oral medication for various rare diseases. Most of these diseases are treated by IV injections, so you're required to go to a hospital, pay about $300,000 a year for the treatment, and we hope to replace that with an oral pill which you could take and should not cost you, should cost you maximum 1/10 of the price of the current treatment. So that's what I'm doing right now. I've been part of 2 startups, and I've learned time management the hard way. So I started out in academia. I have 2 master's degrees in chemistry and biochemistry. And then when I switched over into starting my own business, you very quickly understand the value of time because people make you understand the value of time, really. So and I have sort of learned things by making a few mistakes, and later on I've actively searched for methods of managing my time really well. And so I'm sort of very excited about being on this panel because I hope that a lot of the people who are listening, they don't have to go through the same problems that I did, and hopefully your path is a lot easier than what I've had. So really excited to be here.
Okay, I'm excited to be here too, and it looks like we've got some pretty fun engagement going on so far in our comment section. We're just gonna shout out here. Sammy saying, "Hey, what's up, Sinclair?" And then we have Barbara who's saying that excellent point, Shalini, that time is a non-renewable source, and this is one of the things that we had talked about in our initial meeting too that I really liked, and just framing the thinking around those who use time and set boundaries, like Sinclair mentioned, and so I'm to kind of preface this conversation, I was having a conversation with my dad who does contract work, and he had to take a day off for something. And then when I was talking to him about his day, I was so impressed by how focused he was on his time, not the project, but his time. He said, "I've lost 4 hours, or I've lost 10 hours because of this." And it was because he understands that his time is worth money. And that's something that I just, as an academic, I haven't really been able to I'm still trying to grasp that. And so I'm really excited about this because I think there's a lot of people who are trying to figure out what they should be doing as freelancing and going out into industry and just trying to figure out what they can do and how much money they can make. And I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised as long as it's coupled with this sense of humility, right? And not especially like being an academic, I think that's really important. And having to kind of go through this. We've kind of talked a little bit about where each of you have come from, and I'm so excited to hear that, to hear more. And so with this one, I'm going to ask this question that I love asking from about your origin story. And so for this question, could you just tell us a little bit just about your experience of actually like leaving higher education academy, or like that transition that you're kind of going through, and how it's kind of brought to where we are now. And then we'll kind of get into this, into like the nuts and bolts of things that we can actually do to have that conversation. And so with this one, let's kind of go back in the other direction. Let's start with Nilesh, and then we'll go around and I'll move things along. Okay. All right, Nilesh. So yeah.
Yeah. Hi. So my sort of the way I started was, the typical. So I'm from India, and I came to the United States for higher education, and I joined a PhD program, initially because it was the highest that you could go, and I had dreams of becoming a professor, and the idea was. Like you work hard, you put in your time for about 5 years or so, do the postdoc, and then go through the traditional academic route. And it's a pretty well-worn path, so there's a lot of input available about how do you go about that. Somewhere around 3 or 4 years, into the program, things were not working out for me, and I was not able to, really find what I was looking for in terms of, my idea of a professor was different from how research would have looked for me had I continued. And so I started looking for other things. I gave an MBA exam, and I also sort of started looking for what are my other options. And I walked into this center which was offering support for business interests. So if you had a business plan, if you had an idea, you could you could talk about it. And when I explained my idea to them, they were very interested with it. But they gave me a list of 30 questions, and I had answers to only 2 of them. And never in my life has it happened that somebody's asked me questions and have not had answers to them before this. So I went back and I took the technical idea that I had, which is what I wanted to work on, and found out the business answers. Who would be the customers? Who would pay for this? Who would why is somebody not doing this right now? What is the advantage you would have? Things like that. And so I went back and I was able to sort of come up with answers to a few of those questions. And through that, the center, which was housed at Wayne State University, they were able to sort of handhold me, and that's how I got my first startup started. I worked on it for about 2 years. It was, and I got some very interesting results. I was able to take it all the way up till a pilot scale, where you can make plant pigments in microbes. So you don't have to actually grow a plant through a land-intensive method. You can just grow it in microbes and purify them and things like that. So I worked on it for about 2 years, and then a very exciting opportunity came up in San Francisco, where I was work on a therapeutics project. And almost everybody in the United States knows that healthcare is too expensive, and the cost for quite a few of the rare disease treatments, they average around $300,000 a year. And so we found a way of being able to provide, be able to correct the deficiencies in a patient by giving an oral pill. So we wanted to validate it and commercialize it. That's how I got involved with that startup. That was about 4.5 years ago, and I've been at it since then. We've sort of tested it in preclinical models, and we have some good data, and we're looking to fundraise further. So it's been about 2 startups with the idea of trying to sort of push it as fast as we can, and try and get it into actual clinical testing to see if the drug actually works. So this is where I'm at. I've sort of skipped over a lot of the interesting bits. I think they'll come along as the discussion progresses further. But sort of give the time to other panelists as well.
Okay, and let's go a different direction. Let's go to top to Shalini. Shalani, I apologize. Yes,
Shalini.
I'm sorry.
It's Shalini, Eric. You got it right the first time.
Okay, I'm so self-conscious about this. Okay, yeah, please tell us your origin story and how you came about.
How I came about once upon a time in a land far, far away. But I won't tell you that story yet. Um, so I grew up initially in India and then did most of the rest of my growing up in Singapore, where I did both my undergrad and my PhD. The interesting story that led to me being who I am today is during my PhD, 4 years in, I found myself with no hope of really graduating or publishing anything that would make a difference, etc. And I had to switch labs at that point. And honestly, looking back now, I ended up switching labs less because of my own work, which I would change if I could go back and change, and more because circumstances enabled it. But once I did switch labs, within 2 years, I had two peer-reviewed papers in PNAS, I had requests for reviews, I had been giving talks on my work, etc. So that was my first example of or experience about how my performance is impacted not just by what I do, although I am a key part of it, but by who I'm working for and who I'm working with. And so it was also a lesson for various reasons around prioritization, figuring out how to actually plan projects, how to get to the end, and so on. That experience, of course, was life altering in the sense that before then I had just followed my curiosity and taken the most challenging topic that I was interested in and started studying crystallography. But at that point in time, I knew academia wasn't the right fit for me. So when I went to Yale for my postdoc, I knew that I wasn't going to be staying in academia. So I used my time at Yale very productively. Not only did I do my research, I also helped set up this organization, Career Network for Students, Scientists, and Postdocs at Yale. And the purpose of that was to bring together enough academic mentors who are professors, mentors from industry and grad students and postdocs, so we could actually have those conversations around what other options there are out there. That experience allowed me to then parse through all of the hundreds of options that are open to us and really hone in on the fact that I wanted to move into management consulting for a variety of professional and personal growth reasons. So that was actually the key turning point when I switched to BCG. And then, of course, there's a whole range of stories there that end up with figuring out why I want to work in the space of building workplace cultures and creating inclusive workplace environments. But that's a story for another day. But essentially, it is that understanding of not just what we can do to improve our performance, but the fact that our environment, who we are working with, who we are working for, and what kind of support structure we have around us that impacts our performance, that now led me to starting my own business in this area. More recently, like I'm starting a second startup at the moment, etc. I'm starting a course for grad students and postdocs. It's going to launch in November. I'm working on a book, which is going to launch on November 11th. So when you start learning how to manage your time, there's a lot you can actually get done. As a grad student or postdoc, I would never have imagined that I could be running a business, starting a startup, launching a book, and launching a course simultaneously at the same time. But right now, it's like, yes, I do that, and yes, I do still get some sleep.
I'm excited to talk about this because, amen. Okay, Sinclair and then Vera. Let's go from there.
So I'm not a academic. I've been more on the student affairs side, but working closely with academics is what I've done because the college experience is both. So basically, student affairs is anything that happens outside of the classroom, and we know that both are equally important. Because if students aren't showing up well, if they're not engaged, then we're not retaining them, and then there's no students to go to class. But also, knowing that professors take their work very seriously and knowing that they have a huge impact on today and tomorrow's leaders is also something I respect and find it just be quite fascinating, just how people just focus on one singular thing and can just change the world with their research. So for me, I was a very involved student in undergrad, and the funniest story is that I had a boss once when I was a residence hall director who said, hey, let me see your calendars because you're You're always doing so much. And I said, oh yeah, I have my calendars. I have like 2 or 3 calendars. I have like an agenda pad. I have a notebook. And he said, oh, how do you keep track of anything? I said, I just make it work. And the truth was that I was just burnt out because I just had my energy going into too many buckets. And I wasn't filling my own bucket, and I wasn't doing things for myself in order to be actually productive and actually get anything done well. At that time, my job was really to work with students one-on-one, and I also had a couple other things that I was doing on campus, as well as going to class. And I was just really spread too thin, to the point where I wasn't getting sleep, and I was hangry a lot, which a lot of people can be, hungry and angry. And no one really wanted to engage with me, especially at those late time hours when I was really doing most of my work. And so what I learned from that particular moment was, okay, I'm doing something that I need to change. I need to take this feedback and make a shift. And if I don't, I'm going to continue to be miserable. So it's really a big wake up call for me. And though it took me maybe a couple more months to make that change, to be honest, I found a lot of improvement in just using one calendar. And so that was really that first time that time became something more important to me, where I was able to actually see it on paper. So seeing things on paper and seeing it right in front of me in one place is very helpful. That way I'm able to see what I'm doing professionally. I'm able to see family time. I'm able to see work time, and really able to see what I'm doing with this 100+ hours in my week, because you don't get that time back. And so through the years, I've gotten some, scrutiny over, oh, wow, like, what are you doing outside of work? And are you able to focus on this and that and the third? And people typically never ask, like, how are you doing this? And how are you making this work for you? And the answer is, you kind of just got to start small. What's one thing I can do outside of work that's my passion project? What's one thing I can do outside of work that really fills me up? And how can I fit that into my schedule? And for me, what's been helpful with that is, what is my why? And we've heard this a million times from Simon Sinek, start with why. But it's important for us to know why we're doing something. That gives us more energy and gives us more motivation to really put our investment and energy into something else. But then at the same time, every time we say yes to something, we're saying no to something. So every time you say yes to any task or responsibility that you're doing, you're saying no to something else. And it's the same thing. Anytime you say no to something, you're saying yes to something. And so that's really the foundation of the boundaries work that I've continued to do in any role that I've had, especially outside of work. If I have a speaking engagement somewhere, I got to make sure that me saying yes to that aligns with what I'm going to be saying no to. If I'm saying no to family, I'm saying no to sleep, I have to really kind of put some time and energy to go, okay, is this investment worth it? And if it's not worth it, how can I make it worth it? What do I need to actually take off my plate and take off my calendar right in front of me to make it work? I think one issue that we often face as professionals, whether academic, student affairs, or otherwise, is that we want to make it all work. We kind of want to be all things to all people and make all our dreams come true. But sometimes we're doing things that are actually pushing us back, and not actually giving us the energy to, like Shalini was saying, to start a startup and to have so many amazing things taking place and be able to even take the time to pivot. We're not able to do those things because we're just trying to do everything at once. And so it's something that has been a growth area for me, and I've continued to be able to work on it. I'm not perfect at it, but really identifying my why and having things on paper and really taking that feedback from so long ago has helped me to get to where I am now.
And Vera.
Wow, that doesn't leave me a lot to say after, but I can share my story first, because the very moment I realized the importance of knowing my time was actually a practical constraint. I was working as a postdoc in the USA, and suddenly there was a year they started wanting to know how long a postdoc working in the lab because of the labor rule that they started that year. So I had to submit every 2 weeks a timesheet to my department about how long I have spent in my lab. And as a person who don't want to lie, I was stubbornly tracking on my time. And because we need to get pre-approval if you want to work more than 40 hours per week. So I was stubbornly tracking my time and try to prove to my department that I need more than 40 hours a week, and this would be the case. But surprisingly, I found when I work intensively and I track all of these hours, I actually have used about exactly 40 hours a week to be completely exhausted. I might spend like 12 hours during the day, but when I'm tracking my writing time, tracking my lab time, I've realized that my quality hours are actually pretty similar to what the German and like European standard is, which was a shocking discovery. And that traces back to one of the lectures I have heard about time and energy management. It's not really about time management, but more so about when do you spend your most priority time, the prime time of the day. So for me, that would be the morning 45-minute writing. That's the most valuable time. And I have then, so sometime 20% of that week effort move the needles, and it's the 80-20 rule, right? And it's a famous management idea about how to manage time and resources. So that has been actually quite encouraging. In the end, I haven't requested any extra time hour, but I have forced myself to learn and say no to unproductive tasks. Try to prioritize my prime energy to do things efficiently. And I have been living a 40-hour week, so-called 40-hour week. I think most of the corporate people would disagree that's a 40-hour because I carved out my breaks and lunchtime. But if I work intensively, that's actually how much time I actually spend during the day. And I think it's refreshing to have that idea. And I track time on Toggle as a free app on the internet. You can sign up as a timer, start and stop, and you write what have you done during that time. That was a refreshing look at your budget. It's like a government spending budget, right? How much money do you give to the hospital? How much money you give to education? And that's a moral statement to that government, how much money they spend on other things. For me, my time budget is my moral statement on what value are important to me. And every week after I use my time, I would look back and look at that balance sheet and try to ask myself, Vera, and the same as what I resonate with Sinclair a lot about the why is, does this activity speaks to what your value system is, and does it align to what you're trying to accomplish? I mean, everyone comes around with a good heart of like trying to, hang out, but sometimes you need to prioritize the more challenging and more important goal. So that's why I think after the 80-20 rule and tracking time would be the setting of SMART goal, to start thinking what are the specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-sensitive goal for being better person than yesterday and aligning to your value. And I've lived by that rule even I was in academia. Now I'm transitioning career, starting a YouTube channel. I've never forced myself to an uncomfortable level, shamefully speaking. So I don't have that story to tell when I got burnout. But like, I think having mastered these ideas, I feel quite in tune with my saying no and balancing my life.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and kind of like throwing in some tidbits there about like things that we can do to be valuing our time and kind of the motivation and the drive for understanding the value of our time. And like what Vera, what you just said too, just kind of like jumping on that about like this idea that it's a moral argument, like how you use your time and what you do is a way that you express your own value. And I think that kind of cuts me a little bit because I have to question what is my moral then when it comes to my time and how I use it. Okay, so we have some great questions coming in from the audience as well, and some of them kind of cover this idea. Before we get into some of these practical questions about like about time management and things like that, I think it'd be really important to spend just a few moments, just like about 90 seconds from each of you, about like what is it about higher education that makes it so that academics don't value that time. And I'm using and to Sinclair's point too about the differentiation between academia and student affairs. I think that's an important distinction. But I think that no matter where you are in higher education, I mean, this is an issue. This is a problem. And so why is that? So how about with this one? Let's start with Sinclair, and then we'll go from there and see where it goes, if how we need to go. And so Sinclair, let's kind of start with this idea. And I changed the question a little bit because of that differentiation between academia and student affairs. Because student affairs folk are being just as impacted by everything as the people who are like on the faculty side of things. So I'm really excited to have that perspective here as well. Why don't higher ed folk know how to value their time? Like what is the problem? Sinclair, what do you think?
I think for me personally, I'll speak from my own experience, it's about valuing myself. I identify as a recovering people pleaser, which I know a lot of people get into the field because they want to please people. They want to make them happy. They want to serve them. But sometimes it comes at the expense of doing too much and really run out of energy. But then there are the lies that we tell ourselves, right? If I work hard, if I do this until the job is done, that means that I did a good thing. And sometimes there needs to be a shift, a reframe on that. It's how can I do this work effectively and efficiently? What is it that I'm doing that I'm actually not keeping track of? And how am I making it so that I'm so burnt out that I'm not able to serve students as best I possibly can? There's a great quote that I've used so many times, and it's don't pour from a full glass, but put a glass on top of a saucer, pour from the overflow, right? So I'm not gonna give you what's in that glass. I'm not gonna give you what's on that saucer. I'm gonna give you what's on the overflow. And that really takes really investing time in yourself and in your resources. And so one thing that we can do more of is not only invest time in ourselves and value ourselves more, but really identify ways to be more productive so we can serve students and show up better when we do.
Okay, thank you for that. My hotel is right next to the airport, and so I caught like the vast majority of that comment. And I think that's this idea of especially because I think that in higher education there are so many, like it's a very altruistic group of people, and it's all about giving time. But really, just I think that one of the things that we're trying to talk about here is just this idea that we should value ourselves. Like we shouldn't be working 80 hours a week when we're being paid 40 hours a week, or like just like being able to make better use of that time. I'd like, how about any of the other folks? Let's just kind of like have this be a little bit of an open discussion here. What do you think about like this idea about why it's not working currently?
I think for me, I see two primary reasons. The first is too much of a good thing is always a bad thing, right? Now, for academic research, you need the free time to allow your brain to actually think and come up with new creative ideas, which is something a lot of times in business environments is missing because you're always go, go, go. The issue is that in academia, we've made it an art form to basically not do things at the pace at which they could be done. Because we value that creativity, we value that free time, that free flow of conversation and all of that. And that's important, and it's essential to the process of discovery. The issue is when we take it too far, we are doing a lot of that without really focusing on outcomes. And I think that's the second piece. In academia, we are so fond of and we embrace the idea of free form exploration so much, we forget that creativity thrives within structure. We forget that having an end goal helps us actually get to that point faster, but not without killing creativity. And I think that's where there is a dissonance in our own minds in terms of how much time should we spend in creative free flow interaction versus outcome driven activities that actually give us results. And that balance causes us to feel like our time is not valuable. I remember in my postdoc years, it's not that the actual work I was doing was so much, but this is again, as a biological scientist, I had to wait for incubation periods, etc. So if you clocked in and out my time in the laboratory, you'd probably say, oh, you're in the lab at all hours of day and night. But in between, I could always step out and go meet a friend for coffee, go have a chat with someone, listen to 3 talks a day, and so on and so forth. So it's really a question of, are we really spending that many hours working, or are we just spreading out work over longer periods of time? And because we are bracketing our concept of what we're doing as work, we then think, or we don't get the time to actually focus on other things that are important, like family or other goals or career development or skills development, etc., which are also critical. And so I think for me, those are the two main things that are causing this disconnect with managing time.
I really, really like that that question that you asked about like I'm like like you say that you spent 10 hours in the lab or 10 hours doing research, but I mean, of that 10 hours, I mean, were you actually like in the lab the whole time, or like were you having that coffee that ended up being 30-minute, 45-minute conversation, and then you just kind of like talking about how much work you have to do, right? And I think that I myself am guilty of that. Like I really enjoy taking my time at a slow pace to be able to do that. And so I want like there's some great questions that are coming in here, and so I want to kind of like I want to shift the conversation a little bit as this other airplane is flying over. And so let's go with Nilesh and Vera and kind of talking about like some practical things about billable hours. So let's go ahead, Nilesh. Let's start with you, and then go to Vera.
Yeah. So, could you repeat the question, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely. So just this idea, like we kind of been talking about why academics aren't really great and why higher ed folk aren't very good at about valuing their time. And so what are some of the things that, like if you were to like conceive of your time as a dollar amount, like I'm worth $100 an hour. Like what are some tips that you have to help academics to actually to think about their time as Shalini mentioned before about it's a non-renewable resource.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, when I started with sort of looking at my time, this is something that Veera and Shalini have already touched a little bit. But the best way to make a start is to just keep a tab of how your time is spent. Like how much time did you spend doing your experiment? How much time did you spend reading the literature? How much time did you spend on Facebook and socializing, things like that. I've done this myself, and it would shock you how much time you actually spend on Facebook, for example, or on Twitter, for example, nowadays. And so you start from there, and then you look at the amount of work you've done, and you quickly realize that you could do you could reorganize your day, and you could structure your day in almost with almost the same outcome. So you would still get you still get to talk to your friends, for example, or go grab a coffee, for example, or get work done, and not stretch it as what Shalini was saying. Like instead of showing up to the lab at 7 in the morning and leaving at 10 in the night, with a 3-hour gap in between. Maybe you could structure that 3 hours for something else, or maybe if you put in a 10-hour day, 10-hour work day once, the next day gets to be a little shorter if that's possible. Also, if you're a student, you don't have a lot of control on your time. I mean, like let's sort of be a little clearer about that. If you're a PhD student, the work you do is dictated by somebody else, and typically in academia, the structure is such that one person has, a fair amount of control about how your career is going to shape out in the future if you're interested in an academic path. So it is not entirely up to you, but you can still, within those limitations, still decide that, okay, I'm going to work on, this list of things today, and start looking at how much time did I actually spend on my work. And if you have that accounting down, then we can start moving towards looking at it as billable hours, because anybody who is out of law school or graduate school, within 2 years they are charging hourly rates which sort of eclipse what people in PhDs, for example, can lay a claim at. And it'd be just good to look at how much time does your work get done. So tracking would be the first thing that I would do, I think, and sort of just have this internally to yourself, like you should know how much time you spend on something, and then you can start maximizing how you take it forward. So.
Yeah, Vera, could add that idea, like just this idea of, in order to help us value our time, one of the first steps is, how do you spend your time?
Right. Absolutely. So I have an analogy, like I'm a swimmer. I'm not professional swimmer, but I like to track how much it takes for me to finish a 50-meter sprint. And that's the only way I can swim faster the next time and become a better swimmer and become more streamlined with all the strokes. It's the same way as someone trying to do academic writing, doing lab work. I have a viewer in my PhD Coffee Time channel. She wrote to me a message about, thank you for teaching me how to track time, because she had a lab procedure that she knew from previous knowledge. It takes only 30 minutes to do. So in that day, she was busy, and in the normal time, she would just think, I don't have enough time to do this before catching my kids from school. But she actually had 45 minutes. So she decided just to start the lab work and finish it and catch the bus. And I think that's the beauty of tracking time and actually knowing your speed. So you know how you can fit these pieces during the day. And so one thing I have learned, which is recent from trying to be a freelancer, and I've been on this platform called, I don't know if I can say the name, Upwork. And they have this rule about best practice of freelancing, which I got to learn, is they have this screen recording technology that if you are contracted 1 hour to do the job, you're supposed to record your workstation, whatever you have on your computer, and send that to your client. And of course, we are not doing that to your professor, but I think fairly speaking, like Nilesh has said about this no distraction period, you don't want to send your client your screen that's full of pop-up of social media and in all this chit-chatting while you are saying you're working. And that's like Shalini has hit home with me with a statement about this line of between, like drawing the line between work and your private life. I think it's hard to do because I think there are a lot of academics who are proud of mixing the two life and say, this is my favorite lifestyle. But I really think if you want to tunnel vision and do something right, you have to see it as a work, even they are your friends and colleagues. But you have to talk in focus agenda in a meeting, and then you can catch a coffee after. And that's my preference, and I think it has helped me to realize how to become more productive and leverage more done in a shorter time.
Okay, yeah, this is fantastic, and this is a great transition, I think, into some of the questions that we have. This is the one that I want to put up first. This was it's from Paula Araya Herrera. What about family, husbands, toddlers that are quite dependent? How can you manage without losing your minds? I really want to do more things, but I can't feel enough satisfaction for my achievements. And so I think that this is a big question. I mean, it's like whether or not you're dealing with the family that you have, or as Vera was saying about managing a social network, especially in a time of isolation. Like how do we manage that? How do we do that? Shalini, let's go ahead and start with you.
So I love this question because, hey, Eric, could you leave the question on, because there's a few different parts to it and I would love to unpack it. So first and foremost, I'm going to just grab something from what Nilesh said and give everybody a generic piece of advice that works, whether it's family or it's professors or it's your postdoc or it's your lab technician that you're dealing with, or it's your manager in your company in your next job. If you come in with a plan, they will have less to tell you what to do than if you come in without a plan and ask them what to do. If I come and tell you, hey, Nilesh, you told me that I need to do X, Y, and Z. This is how I'm going to get it done. And this is by when you'll see the results. Nilesh is very likely going to say, oh, looks like you have it all in hand. Go do it. If I go to Nilesh and say, hey, Nilesh, what am I supposed to do? Nilesh is going to say, do this and 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 this. And he's not going to bother with whether I have the time to do it or not. Okay, so, and this works across the board with anybody. You tell them beforehand, this is what I'm going to get done. This is when you'll see the results. Let's talk then. That's what's going to happen. So take charge. Don't give up your power to anybody, right? Including your professor.
Yeah. So Shalini, if I just interrupt, that is a great suggestion. It works really well outside of academia. I never had a chance to try it, when I was within academia, but outside of it, it has worked really wonders. So, I would second that for sure.
Yeah, so I've tested it in academia. It does work. And I was fortunate because Professor Pollard used to be famous for his extreme focus on time. So when we used to go for our annual retreat for the department, he actually measured how long it took him to drive each year, and he would compare it with the year before. And in journal clubs, we had exactly 8 minutes to present our papers, and then the buzzer would go off. So he really did focus on time, but what that did was allow us to tell him when things would happen. And he also realized the importance of focused work. So if he wanted to talk to you, you could actually tell him, like he would see you're super focused and he would wait, or he'd come back later. But that teaches you that if you want the respect for your time and the work that you're doing, you have to respect it first for anyone else to respect it. So feel that confidence, or rather value your work enough to say, hey, I'm not going to ruin this experiment because you want to have a 2-minute conversation, right? And I'm not going to redo my work because you want to have a 2-minute conversation. That's the first one. The second one, Eric, if you could throw up that question again. I love the fact that there are two parts here that I'd love to address. One, I can't feel enough satisfaction for my achievements. Done is better than perfect. Done is better than perfect. If you are not satisfied with done, you will never be satisfied because you cannot be perfect in everything all the time. It's not possible. So make that your new mantra. Done is better than perfect. The second thing is, I love how the husband and toddlers are in the same bucket in your statement. When you're probably already married and talking about somebody who already exists, but for anybody who still has a choice, please don't marry somebody who cannot be a partner for you. And if you are married to someone who is as dependent as a toddler, I think it's worth investing the time to train them up. If you train them now, the 1 year's training that you'll invest in today will reap rewards for you for the next 50 years. So do that now, because they need, like, your adult family members, and in fact older children, they learn a lot from being given the responsibility. I mean, not the husbands, they should just be taking the responsibility, that's a different matter. But if you have old enough kids, give them the responsibility, give them the charge, because they need to learn how to value their time and their work.
Yeah,
I have actually I have a quick one to add to that, because training require a SMART goal, and I have a SMART goal for Paula, because I have heard from most people who have children and family. They said the best way to do is to start your first 30 minutes of the day and ask for that 30 minutes of personal time. And if that, like usually most people would say, yeah, I can do 30 minutes to take care of the toddler. And you have to prioritize what's valuable to you to do that 30 minutes. And I think that's part of the training in the process. And I think, being willing to ask for time and unapologetically, and be careful how you spend that time, and if that align to your goal and value, you will have less guilt. If you're an academic writer, after 30-minute writing, you don't feel guilty walking around campus and seeing your PI. And if you're a small business owner, like your 30 minutes in the morning has to be doing strategic planning. Those are the deep work time, and every human has the right to do it. And I think with that, you will feel a lot more peaceful during the day.
Okay, this is fantastic, and if you're watching and you are the dependent person, work on that, right? Okay, so let's go on to another question here. This one right here is from Barbara, and then and Sammy. I want to kind of like combine the questions right here, because I think they kind of go hand in hand. And so this one is from Sammy. It says, can you share any recommendations for 3 completely different time management techniques? I'm having one that is trouble that I should just read it, trying to summarize it. I'm having trouble finding something that sticks for me. And then this question that kind of is coupled really well. So not only like, what are some actual like time management things that you can do? And then also with this question from Barbara, what are some strategies to identify commitments that are pushing us back rather than leading to our goals? And so I think that the reason I want to kind of pair these two together is because we have like, what are some practical things that we need to do? And then once we've kind of carved out that time, how do we prioritize that time? Nilesh, let's go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, I'll just quickly jump in. So there is this technique that is attributed to Eisenhower. I don't know if that is true or not, but the technique is basically a 2x2 matrix, and you break your tasks into 4 different quadrants, which is urgent and important, urgent but not urgent, not important, and important but not urgent. And if you start putting these, in these different quadrants, and then if you look at what is the task that you are, doing the most during the day, most people generally do something that is either not urgent and not important, like checking your email every hour or so, or something like that, or they'll do something which is urgent but which is actually not very important over their long-term goal. So like if somebody gets in touch with you via email or gives you a call, and if it is your time to think deep, or if it's your time to just be creative, if you still take the call anyway, or if you reply to a tweet, or if you look at your Facebook notification, it seems urgent then, but it's not important, but we get distracted by these things. So the 2x2 matrices worked really well for me. So that could be one of the 3 time management techniques that you could look at. I'm sure other panelists would want to jump in as well.
So I love the 2x2 matrix and I use it regularly. And this is what I would say for if you have never done it before, this is what my process is, and I need one this weekend. So, like, this is exactly what I'm going to be doing. Take a couple of year mark 2 hours, maybe 3. If you have a toddler, then 3 60-minute or 3 45-minute breaks, like whatever works for you. But make sure that chunks of time that you can have dedicated time. I use a whiteboard. You can use pen and paper. I basically put on it every single thing I can think of that needs to get done. Everything. No matter how small, no matter how big, sometimes the big things need to be chunked up into smaller things, but I don't do that right now. I just put everything out there. So I then feel this huge weight shifting off my shoulders because now it's not all in my head anymore, and making me feel like the whole world is going to come crashing down if I miss something. And of course, I can't remember what the something is. The next thing is you asked that question around how do we know what is holding us back from our goals? On a separate sheet of paper, write down what do you want to achieve in the next month or the next quarter or the next year. And I say not just goals, but I also say think about who you are trying to become. And then based on who you're trying, this is the values alignment piece that Vera and Sinclair were talking about before. Like what's truly important to you? Who do you want to become? Then take a nice red bright marker or a pen and cross out everything that doesn't help you become that person. Just cross it out. You'll get rid of anywhere between 25 to 50% of the things that you do are completely not helping you get to where you want to go. Then you think about, now do a second round of thinking around where you want to go and what are the things you should be doing that you're not doing or that wasn't on your radar before. Put them on the list. Take that list, put it on that 2x2 matrix. Once you've done that, then the question becomes, for the important and not urgent, block time on your calendar. Every day you're going to dedicate that 30 minutes in the beginning of the day, 50 minutes at the end of the day, whatever it is, right? Figure out what works for your schedule. It can be as little as 15 minutes, not less than that, as much as an hour a day, focused only on the important but not urgent things. So you keep making progress towards the big goals. Then take the important and urgent and put them on your calendar or whatever method you have for tracking your day. I tell everybody I'm a slave to my calendar. I told my publisher that. So she's like, okay, wait, have you put such and such? She asked me to do something. She's like, have you put it on your calendar? Because I know it won't get done if it's not on your calendar. So this is for everybody to know, like, if you don't get on my calendar, you're not going to, like, it's not going to happen. Doesn't work for my family. That's not, but for everybody else. Once you've done that, for other items, think about the not important, not urgent, cross it out again. Another 25% should be out of your list. And then finally, for the important, not urgent, anyway, whatever the fourth quadrant is that's left, think about what you can delegate, right? That's where you train your spouse, your children to take care of things. Those are things that can be done. Like if your clothes are folded a little bit crooked, it doesn't matter. Let your kid do it, right? It really doesn't matter. If you can batch produce your meals for the week, do it. Like, why do you need to cook 4 times a day? Et cetera, et cetera. Just figure out ways to batch the work so that you don't have to do it A, alone, B, all the time, unrepeatedly. That's it.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, let's kind of close this out with Vera and Sinclair. Like, what are some of these practical things that we can do? And then while we're doing this, I'm going to go ahead and pick our winners for our raffle for submitting a question. Thank you so much, everybody, for doing that. So Sinclair, let's start with you. Like, what are some of these practical time management things that people can reclaim the ownership of their time?
Yeah, so I use a couple of tools in my everyday life. I work with 215 students total. And so it behooves me to be able to be effective when it comes to communication and to use my time as much as possible, as well as possible. So a couple of things. On the family side, my wife and I have a shared calendar. So fortunately, we are both very interdependent partners, and we're able to take care of ourselves and we're able to stick to things. And so we put things on the calendar and we're good to go. You know, every other Sunday, we're looking at our budget. We also use a shared app to keep track of the budget. And so we're able to communicate those things that typically people are going back and forth with all the time or they're feeling stressed about, but we're able to put on the calendar and actually stick to it. We also have a shared grocery list. So I'm able to order groceries and pick them up from the grocery store. And it all works pretty smoothly. But we got there by taking the time to figure out what it is that we needed, where we could cut the fat, and then how can we do this in a simple way that works for us. And it takes some trial and error. The other thing that professionally that works for me is Boomerang, which is a great app to use with Google, especially Gmail. And so one of the features I like with Boomerang is that I'm able to pause my inbox. So I'm able to pause my inbox for 1 to 2 hours, and the only emails that will come through are emails from my supervisor or any other important constituents that I need to get back to, or any subject lines like urgent or important, those will come through. But typically, through pausing my inbox, I'm able to spend that time doing deep work like Nilesh was talking about earlier, which is actually a great book if folks want to check that out. It's a book about just deep work and being able to focus. A lot of our time is spent checking emails, doing mundane things on our phones, like checking social media. We don't realize that it gets eaten up there. And so Boomerang is a great tool for that. Boomerang is also a great tool because it allows you to schedule meetings right in your inbox. You don't have to jump to your calendar. You're able to find a time that works for you and that other person. And then it also sends you reminders of, hey, you need to get back to this person because they never replied to your email. So really just think of it as having a personal assistant. Maybe you don't want to pay for a personal assistant right now and pay somebody. So make the tools work for you in that sense and just be super practical with it.
Okay, and Vera.
I have two quick thing to add is the 4x4 quadrant. Just shameless pages. My YouTube videos has actually talked about it. So if there's not enough time, you can go check it out. There is an analogy I recently learned is if you put in all the unimportant things and urgent and unimportant things first, it's like a glass of sand. If you put a lot of sand in, you can't fit any more pebble. The pebble are the really important, valuable work that you want to move. So remember that picture, if you have a glass, you want to fit sand and pebble together in the day, you have to put the more important pebble first, and then you fill on the sand. So if you need to visualize that statement from Shalini, that is the way. Another one little point I want to touch on is there's a question about who I want to be question in terms of profession and personal. And I think it's a great question because you, in some way, you want to align the value between professional and personal. And I have a 10% flexibility rule for my week because we just talk about all this system to make it very streamlined and quite rigid in a way. But I do believe that we're human and we do need to sometimes catch a little bit of refreshing ideas from the others. And my way of doing that is to try to budget 10% of the week to do that. If you work 60 hours a week, then maybe 6 hours, that could be everyday lunchtime or something that is lower productivity hour, and you can afford to take a new perspective. And to me, the 10% time goes to learning a new skills, learning a new software, anything that I felt like a roadblock and it's a luxury to learn at that time, that will be my professional development hour or social networking hour.
Okay, and so this has been fantastic, and I just am very grateful for each of you for spending some of your time here with us and having this conversation. I'll now that we're at the end of our time, I want to be respectful of that, and I think that's something that we didn't really say too, is making sure that we're respectful of other people's times. Yeah, congratulations to our winners, Barbara, Sammy, Paula, and it's coming. I can't see. It's really slow. Bailey, there we go. So thank you so much. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn and we'll get those figured out. And right now we'll close by just like saying thank you so much for being here. Yeah, we'll go ahead and I'll close it out here. So thank you everybody for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, one of these days I'll learn how to end this less awkwardly. Okay, so I think that was helpful for me. I learned some things, and one of the things that we were kind of talking about in our little side comment section that I think that is kind of important that we didn't really get to touch on specifically is that as you're doing all of these things, it's a trial and error process. Not everything is going to work for you. Not every technique is going to kind of fit your vibe and things like that. So it's really important to give yourself time, as Sinclair talked about, in order to really discover the right fit for you and for your life. And as you do that, don't let your schedule become like the iron fist of your life either. Like, make sure that you build in flexibility. Make sure that you can navigate how to have a conversation with somebody if something does come up that you can't be there, or that you have to miss for something. And so I think it's important. I really feel it's important to reiterate this idea that your time is important. Your time is valuable. And when we say value, I mean value. Money. You spent a lot of time and a lot of money becoming the expert that you are. Think of yourself that way, in a very real way. And I think that you'll find that it is quite empowering. Once again, thank you so much for all of our panelists and for all those who answer or put up questions. And I will see you next week. And thank you again for reaching out. And those of you who have won, please connect to me on LinkedIn and we'll go from there. Okay. Have a wonderful day, everybody.